Good morning, this is Angela with Permaculture. It's a sunny August afternoon. I came outside to my front yard to pick the last of the peaches, which are ripe. We have an Oregon curl-free peach tree up here in this small section of our food forest. And while I was up here, I wanted to discuss an issue and a concept in permaculture, which is that we see more diversity and more abundance in the edges and the marginal. So that's actually one of the principles of permaculture: use edges and value the marginal. So what does that mean? Well, there is the physical concept of edge effect, which is a known ecological concept in which there is an overlap of two differing landscapes, right? Where two landscapes abut each other. For instance, where a woodland meets a field or a meadow. Along the edge there, you have greater diversity of species, and there is a lot of benefit to humans and to wildlife in these areas where you get some of the characteristics from each of the two landscapes that are abutting each other. And that transition between landscapes tends to lend itself toward greater fertility and greater abundance and an increased diversity of species. So that's what edge effect is in terms of a physical ecological concept. Now, that's not really what I'm thinking about here today. While I'm out here to pick peaches, I actually want to talk about what the garden is looking like and how that is a concept of using and valuing the marginal, using and valuing those edges. So I think that there is the physical edge effect, and I want to make a greater video, more in-depth video on that in the future, but there is also the edge effect in terms of seasonality and the time of year. And that's what I wanted to talk about briefly this afternoon. So the garden right now, you can see some patches where it's incredibly verdant and green, and have things like plums that are starting to mature here. These won't be ready till September. There's a ton of them up here in the front yard. And we have things like apples, which will be ready. These will be ready in late September, early October, Hudson's Golden Gem. And then we have things that are done and spent and that I have cut back. We have flowers that are dying and going to seed. We have areas of brown, dead debris where I have been doing chop and drop. And I think that in August, you see a lot of this in the garden. Let me move over this way here. In August, we see a lot of this overlap, this edge effect, where we are reaching the end of summer, particularly in my zone here in Portland, Oregon. We're reaching the end of summertime, and we see a die-off of things that were producers in the late spring and early summer, and the fall crops have not yet come into full production. And so we see this mix of brown, dying, decomposing things and still really lush production. And I think it's a really important time in the seasonal life of a gardener to really think about August, because some of us are sort of experiencing garden fatigue at this point in the year. Gardening is really fun in the spring, early summer. In August, it's hot. Some things are fading. The garden is starting to go past its peak, right? And we are maybe getting a little tired of it. It's feeling a little monotonous, particularly if people have to water or I'm gonna step through this spider here. Since I'm filming, I forgot my spider clearing stick. It's definitely something you need this time of year. So I think that as we are in this season of the garden, it's important to remember that edge effect, and we are seeing the tail end of prolific production from earlier crops, early summer crops, and we're starting to see the first yield of fall crops, like the first of the apples. We're watching that transition. from summer abundance and getting ready for the fall abundance. So I don't want you to feel discouraged if you're looking at your garden and you're seeing things that are dwindling and dying. For example, here's some of my blackberries that are very sunburned, and they are pretty much done for the year, just a little bit left. Or this is the very end of my blueberries, but look, they're hidden underneath my goji berries, which are just beginning to ripen. So we get this chronological edge effect, where we see not only the harvest of summer fruits, but the preparation for an autumnal harvest as well. And I think that's a really exciting time. So if you're experiencing some garden fatigue, do what you need to do to rest up and get ready for what the September and October garden looks like in terms of preparation for winter, fall abundance, but also just enjoy this time where, yes, the peak of June lush greenness in the garden may have faded a little bit. And yes, some things in the garden are looking tired and sad and have kind of passed their peak for the year. But also appreciate that this is a time where really interesting things are happening, where there's a lot of really cool overlap. And also use this time to be thinking about, what is the edge effect? How can I follow that permaculture principle of value the marginal? How can I follow that permaculture principle of thinking in a mindset that looks for the overlap and sees the increased diversity and the increased possibility in a situation, in time, or in the landscape in which we are shifting from one aspect of things to another. So I'll be back soon to talk more about edge effect. But that was just what I was thinking about while I'm out here picking peaches. Hope you all are staying cool in this tail end of summer, enjoying all of the fruits of your garden, thinking in a permaculture mindset. Stay cool, and I'll be back soon. Thanks.